Buddhāvataṃsaka Sutra. Book 39. Entry into the Realm of Reality. Video 19. Mahideva. His mind following the far-reaching practice of enlightening beings, eager to embody the sphere of knowledge of the enlightening being Ananyagamin, seeing the excellence of the qualities of the realm of exercise of great mystic knowledge, girding himself with the armor of steadfast vigor, full of joy, his mind on the freedom of inconceivable liberation, accomplishing the virtues of enlightening beings, practicing concentration, establishing mental command, entering into vows, learning powers of analysis and expression, bringing forth power, Sadhana went to the city of Dvaravati and asked for Mahideva. The people of the city told Sadhana, "This Mahideva is in a temple at the crossroads in the city expounding the teaching in a giant body." Sadhana then went to Mahideva, paid his respects, and said, "Noble one, I have set my mind on supreme perfect enlightenment, but I do not know how to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings. I hear that you give enlightening beings instruction, and wish you would tell me how to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings." Then the celestial Mahideva extended 4 hands in 4 directions, brought water from the oceans with extreme speed and washed his face. He scattered golden flowers over Sadhana and said, "Enlightening beings are hard to get to see, extremely hard to get to hear. They rarely appear in the world, being so exalted. They are supreme lotuses of humanity, saviors of the world, refuges for the world, reliances for the world. They are great suns, makers of light for sentient beings, the ones who show the path of safety and peace to those on the path of delusion. They are guides to the truth, leaders on the way to the citadel of omniscience. I think killer of wrong views is the name for enlightening beings, in that they manifest themselves to those whose minds are undefiled, they appear before those whose deeds are pure, they imbue those who are free from evils of speech with the light of eloquence, and at all times they stand before those whose intentions are purified. Son, I have attained an enlightening liberation called cloud-net." Sadhana asked, "What is the sphere of this cloud-net liberation?" At that moment the celestial Mahideva manifested a heap of gold the size of a mountain before Sadhana, as well as a heap of silver, a heap of lapis lazuli, a heap of crystals, a heap of coral, a heap of emeralds, a heap of starry jewels, a heap of clear jewels, a heap of radiant jewels, a heap of jewels with facets facing in all directions, a heap of crown jewels, a heap of varicolored jewels, a heap of necklaces, a heap of earrings, a heap of bracelets, a heap of belts, a heap of anklets, a heap of various kinds of flowers, fragrances, incenses, garlands, unguents, aromatic powders, robes, parasols, banners, pennants, musical instruments, and all objects of desire. He then said to Sadhana, "Take of these and give gifts, do good works, make offerings to Buddhas, take care of beings by generous giving, get them to practice transcendent relinquishment, teach the world by giving, show relinquishment, which is hard to do. In the same way as I give you all these goods, so also do I make relinquishment habitual in countless sentient beings whose sense of generosity is not repressed. Having gotten them to plant roots of goodness with the Buddha, the teaching, and the community, and spiritual benefactors, I get them to aspire to supreme perfect enlightenment. Furthermore, to those who are intoxicated with the enjoyment of objects of desire, who are very greedy for the enjoyment of objects, I make objects appear impure. To those filled with anger, those who are arrogant, conceited, proud, and haughty, those who should be led away from strife, I show terrors like fiends and ghouls who feed on flesh and blood, and show them that it is all the vehemence of arrogance. To those who are lazy and negligent I show the dangers of fire, water, kings, and brigands, to stir them to vigor and diligence. Thus with various appropriate means I turn them away from bad conduct and get them to develop good qualities, to destroy all impediments to the transcendent ways, to make the necessary preparations for the transcendent ways, to cross over all the precipitous paths on the mountains of barriers to enlightenment, and to enter the unobstructed state. I only know this cloud-net enlightening liberation. How can I know the practice or tell of the virtues of the enlightening beings who are like the celestial chief Indra, crushing the titans of affliction, who are like water, extinguishing the fire of suffering of all beings, who are like heat, evaporating the water of craving of all beings, who are like wind, shattering the mountains of all attachments, who are like thunderbolts, rending asunder the mountain of the congealed notion of self? South of here, at the site of enlightenment in the region of Magadha and Jambudvipa, lives an earth goddess named Sthivara. Go ask her how to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings. So then Sadhana paid his respects to Mahadeva and went on. Sthivara. Then Sadhana went to the earth goddess Sthivara at the site of enlightenment in Magadha. 100,000 earth goddesses said to one another, "Someone comes who will be refuge for all sentient beings. A vessel of enlightenment comes who will break the shell of ignorance of all sentient beings. One who springs from the family of spiritual sovereigns comes who will put on the turban of unattached supreme purity of a spiritual sovereign. A hero bearing the mighty thunderbolt of knowledge comes who will destroy the weapons of all false teachers." Then those earth goddesses, led by Sthivara, caused the earth to tremble, made the ocean roar, illumined the whole universe with a glorious light, and with bodies adorned with all kinds of jewelry, like bundles of lightning bolts descending from the sky, emerged from the surface of the earth, with all tree sprouts growing, all flowering trees blooming, all rivers flowing, all lakes and ponds rising, fragrant rains showering, great winds bearing flowers, billions of musical instruments playing, celestial palaces, ornaments, and terrors appearing, bulls, elephants, tigers, and lions roaring, the lords of the gods, titans, serpents and spirits thundering, mountains crashing together, and hundreds of billions of treasuries surfacing. Then the earth goddess said to Sadhana, "Welcome. This is a spot of ground where you have planted roots of goodness, which I have witnessed. Do you want to see the results in one place?" Sadhana paid his respects to the goddess and said, "I do." Then the goddess, touching the earth with the sole of her foot, caused it to appear adorned with hundreds of billions of deposits of countless jewels, and said to Sadhana, "These billions of treasuries of jewels accompany you and are at your service, to be used as you wish. They have been produced as a result of your good works and are preserved by the power of your good works. Take of them and do whatever should be done." I have attained an enlightening liberation, unassailable asylum of knowledge. Having attained this liberation, I have constantly stayed by and protected the enlightening being Vairocana since the time of Pankara Buddha. Since then I have observed the enlightening being's mental activity, entered his sphere of knowledge and all his vows, followed his purification of enlightening practice, gone along into all concentrations, pervaded the vastness of the mind of the mystic knowledges of all enlightening beings, and have comprehended, remembered, and taken in his mastery of the powers of all enlightening beings, his insuperability like that of all enlightening beings, his pervasion of the network of all lands, his reception of the prediction of enlightenment from all Buddhas, his manifestation of attainment of enlightenment in all times, his way of activating all the cycles of the teaching, the doctrines expounded in all the scriptures, his way of revealing the vista of the great teaching, his way of knowing how to lead all sentient beings to perfection, and his way of manifesting all the miracles that Buddhas perform. I attained this unassailable asylum of knowledge, enlightening liberation from the Buddha's skillful guide in the world moon banner eons ago, more eons than the number of atoms in the polar mountain, in an eon called supernal manifestation of light. Going in and out of this unassailable asylum of knowledge liberation and causing it to expand and broaden, I have always been seeing Buddhas continuing up to this eon of virtue in the present, and now I have propitiated as many Buddhas as atoms in untold Buddha lands, and I have seen the spiritual transformations of all those Buddhas when they came to the sight of enlightenment, and I have witnessed all those Buddhas' roots of goodness. I know only this enlightening liberation, unassailable asylum of knowledge. How can I know the practice or tell the virtues of the enlightening beings who attend all Buddhas, who remember the tales of all the Buddhas who have entered the recondite knowledge of all Buddhas, who speed throughout the cosmos in a moment of thought, who are physically equal to the Buddhas, who are undefiled receptacles of the mind of all Buddhas, who have always affected the birth of all Buddhas, who are envoys physically indivisible from all Buddhas? In this country Magadha in Jambudvipa is a city called Kapilavastu, where a night goddess named Vasanti lives. Go ask her how to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings. So then Sadhana paid his respects to the earth goddess Thavara and went on. Vasanti. Then Sadhana went to the great city Kapilavastu, remembering the teaching of the earth goddess Thavara, remembering that enlightening liberation, unassailable asylum of knowledge, extending the cultivation of that enlightening concentration, contemplating that enlightening doctrine, roaming in the freedom of that enlightening liberation, looking into the subtleties of knowledge of that enlightening liberation, entering into the ocean of knowledge of that enlightening liberation, focusing on the unity of the knowledge of that enlightening liberation, pursuing the accomplishment of the endless knowledge of that enlightening liberation, plunging into the ocean of knowledge of that enlightening liberation. Going around the city from left to right, he went in by the eastern gate and stood in the middle of the crossroads of the city. Before long the sun set, and, skillfully grasping the instructions of spiritual benefactors, he longed to see the night goddess Vasanti, considering spiritual benefactors a sure source of attainment of enlightened knowledge, based concretely on the sphere of the eye of universal knowledge, turning in all directions, wishing to see the spiritual benefactor, thinking of her with great respect as the abode of knowledge, his eye of knowledge extending to all objects, looking over the ocean of all that is noble with the eye of concentration, reaching throughout the ocean of knowledge of principles of all reality realms, intent on extension of the eye of great knowledge. He saw the night goddess Vasanti in the sky over Kapilavastu, in a tower of brilliant, incomparable jewels, sitting on a great jewel lion throne in the calyx of a lotus of all the finest fragrances. She was beautiful, with a golden complexion, soft, rich black hair, and dark eyes. Her body was adorned with all kinds of ornaments, and she was wearing a red robe. She wore a sacred crest adorned with the orb of the moon, and her body showed reflections of all the stars and constellations. He also saw in her pores all the sentient beings who had been liberated by her from the calamities of unfavorable circumstances, evils, and miserable conditions. He also saw in her pores all the sentient beings whom she had settled in heaven, and all whom she had perfected in the enlightenment of hearers and individual illuminates, and in omniscience. He also saw in her pores all the various means, embodiments, and appearances she assumed to perfect them. He also heard coming from her pores the various utterances she used to teach and develop them. He also perceived in her pores the timing, the adaptation to sentient beings' inclinations and interests, the enlightening practices, forceful means, ways of mystic transformation through concentration, powers, states, observations, contemplations, mystic projections, powerful expansions of the great person, and free masteries of liberation by which they were perfected. Having seen and heard those oceans of teachings involving various means, Sadhana was transported with joy. He paid his respects to the night goddess Vasanti and said to her, "Noble one, I have set my mind on supreme perfect enlightenment." Seeing all qualities of Buddhahood as based on spiritual benefactors, I rely on spiritual benefactors. Please show me the way of omniscience whereon an enlightening being sets forth to the stage of the 10 powers. Vasanti answered Sadhana, "It is good that you are so devoted to spiritual benefactors and desire to hear the words of spiritual benefactors. Carrying out the instructions of spiritual benefactors, you will surely arrive at supreme perfect enlightenment. I have attained an enlightening liberation, a means of guiding sentient beings by the light of truth, which dispels the darkness for all sentient beings. I am kind to the evil-minded, compassionate to evildoers, pleased with those who do good, impartial toward the good and the bad. I am determined to purify the defiled, to set the misguided straight, to inspire higher aspirations in those with low aspirations, to increase the energy of those with inferior faculties, to free those attached to the mundane world from its repetitious circles, and to set those oriented toward the vehicles of individual salvation onto the path of omniscience. I am concentrating on these concerns and am imbued with the enlightening liberation through which I guide sentient beings with the light of truth that dispels the darkness for all sentient beings. Any people who travel on a dark night, where ghosts, thieves, and thugs lurk, when the sky is covered with black clouds, when it is misty, windy, and raining, when there is no moonlight or starlight, when there is no visibility, if they go on the sea, or on land, or in the mountains, or over deserts, or through forests, or through provinces or villages, or on the roads, if they are shipwrecked at sea or held up on land, or fall in the mountains, or run out of provisions in the desert, or if they get stuck in the underbrush in the forest or run into trouble, or if they get scattered in the darkness, or if they get mugged in a town, or if they get lost or confused and cannot tell which direction they are going in, or if they run into disaster on the road, I rescue them by various means. For those traveling on the sea, I quell hurricanes, get them past bad waters, stop unfavorable winds, quiet the raging billows, free them from the perils of whirlpools, clarify the directions, lead them on the right sea lanes, show them the channels, guide them to the isles of treasure, show them the way in the form of a navigator. Through various forms of being I act as a support and reliance. This root of goodness, furthermore, I dedicate in this way, may I be refuge for all sentient beings, to put an end to all suffering. For those on land on a dark night, where there are thickets and brambles, gravel and grit, on uneven terrain, battered by vicious wind and rain, painfully cold or hot, where savage beasts lurk, where killers and bandits roam, I save those who have lost their way on the earth, by means of the forms of the sun, the risen moon, meteoric showers, planets, the light of the stars, celestial beings, and enlightening beings. And I think, by this root of goodness may I become a savior of all sentient beings. For those on precipitous mountain paths, in danger of death, so that they may live, and for those who are dominated by the desire for fame, those who wish for renown, those who seek enjoyment, those who are avaricious, those who strive to get material things, those whose foremost desire is worldly success, those who are wrapped up in affection for their families, those who are lost in the jungle of youth, and those who are oppressed by various miseries and fears, I become a refuge by various means, for example, by producing caves in the mountains for shelter, by producing fruits and roots for food, by producing streams for drinking water, by producing shelter against cold and heat, by showing the right path, by the songs of birds, by the luster of medicinal plants, by the glow of mountain spirits. I become a refuge for those in mountain caves and crevices, those oppressed by various pains, dispelling the darkness, producing level ground for them. And I resolve that just as I rescue these people in the mountains, so will I become a refuge for those fallen on the precipitous trails of the mountain of mundane existence, who are in the grip of old age and death. For those stuck in the jungle on a dark night, confronted with a vast expanse of trees, on roads blocked by grass and water, reeds, trees, and vines, in thickets of various trees and creepers, frightened by tigers roaring, their minds filled with what they have to do, plagued with various perils and misfortunes, not knowing the way out of the forest, I show the right way to go. And I resolve that by this root of goodness I will free those in the thicket of views, caught in the web of craving, oppressed by the various pains and perils of the mundane world, liberating them from all miseries. And as for those in the desert, in the darkness, by various means I comfort them, show them the way, and lead them to safety, resolving that by this root of goodness I shall liberate those who are in the desert of the mundane world, who have fallen into evil ways, freeing them from all suffering and setting them on the road of omniscience, where there is eternal safety. As for those in inhabited areas who are experiencing the trouble of owning a home, I draw them away from their attachments to their abodes by various means, and resolve by this root of goodness to remove all sentient beings from attachment to the elements of body and mind, and establish them in non-reliant omniscience. As for those in villages who are attached to their house and relatives, beset by various family troubles, their minds agitated by various anxieties, I take care of them by material gifts and please them in a proper manner, establish them in the state of non-attachment, and resolve by this root of goodness to remove those who cling to the village of their senses from the sphere of mundane objects and set them in the sphere of omniscience. As for those who lose their sense of direction on a dark night, who think level ground is uneven, who think high ground is low, who think low ground is high, I light the way for them by various means. To those who want to go out I show the door, to those who want to travel I show the road, to those who want to cross over I show the bridge, to those who want to go in I show the house, to those who want to look around I show the directions. I show the high and low ground, the smooth and rough terrain and its various formations. I show travelers the villages, cities, towns, provinces, and capitals. I show those who are hot and thirsty streams and ponds and groves and parks. To those grieving at separation from their loved ones I show their family and friends, advisors, acquaintances, and kin, and various pleasing forms. And I resolve that just as I light the way for those in the dark who cannot see and have lost their way, as I create light to make various forms manifest, in the same way I will use the light of great wisdom to destroy the darkness of ignorance of those in the long night of the mundane world, who have no sense of direction at all, who are in the darkness of ignorance, whose eye of knowledge is covered by the veil of nescience, who are perverted in concepts, thoughts, and views, who think the impermanent is permanent, who think the painful is painless, who think the selfless has self, who think the impure is pure, who cling to a definite self, being, life, soul, individuality, and personality, who are attached to sense faculties, sense consciousnesses, and sense data, who are confused about cause and effect, who do what is not good, who take life, who steal, who abuse sexuality, who tell lies, who slander others, who speak harshly, who sow dissension, who are covetous, who are malicious, who hold erroneous views, who do not honor their parents or mendicants or priests, who do not recognize the blameworthy or the good, who do not take pleasure in what is right, who are dominated by ill-gotten gain, who pervert what is right by erroneous views, who falsely impugn the enlightened, who try to suppress true teaching, who fly the banner of demons, who injure or kill enlightening beings, who are hostile to the great vehicle, who cut off the aspiration for enlightenment, who defame enlightenment beings, who injure or kill their mothers, who are hostile, who revile the wise, who consort with the corrupt and unjust, who damage the relics of saints and the goods of the religious community, who oppose their parents, who act in hellish ways, who are on the brink of disaster, having destroyed the darkness of their ignorance by the light of great wisdom and directed them toward supreme perfect enlightenment. By the great vehicle of universal good I shall show them the path to the stage of knowledge of the 10 powers. I shall show them the stage of the enlightened, the realm of the enlightened, the ocean of wisdom of omniscience, the sphere of enlightened knowledge, the consummation of the 10 powers, the power of mental command of Buddhas and the unity of all Buddhas. Having shown them this, I will establish them in the knowledge of equality of all Buddhas. As for those who are sick, who are worn out from long illness, whose bodies are weakened, who have wasted away, those who have grown old and are overcome by old age, those who are wretched and poor, those who have come to the end of their lives, those who are in bondage, those who are being tortured, and convicts who have been imprisoned, I stand by them to save them from the danger of injury to their lives. I employ all means to remove the illnesses of those who are sick. Those who are wasted away and overcome by old age I take care of by constant attendance. I provide protection for the helpless, I enrich the poor, I take care of those who have fallen into misfortune by regarding their welfare as my own. Those abroad I lead to their own country, and those astray I lead in the right direction. Those in bondage I release from their bonds. Those who are being tortured I release from the pain of torture. I save the lives of convicts who have been handed over to the king for execution. I resolve that just as I am a refuge saving these beings from various perils and afflictions, so shall I take care of them with the supreme protection of the truth and liberate them from all mental afflictions. I shall enable them to transcend birth, old age, sickness, death, grief, lamentation, misery, depression, and mental disturbance. I shall free them from all fears of falling into bad conditions. I shall establish them in the care of spiritual benefactors. I shall take care of them by giving them jewels of true teaching. I shall get them to act impeccably. I shall direct them to the purity of the body of the enlightened. I shall establish them in the knowledge of the realm where there is ultimately no old age or death. Continue to video 20.